There's a moment that comes once in a generation. A moment when the entire world stops what it's doing and holds its breath. When a name that carries the weight of legacy, of expectation, of pressure beyond imagination, finally answers the question nobody dared ask out loud. On that course, in front of thousands of spectators and millions watching through screens, a young man with familiar eyes stepped up to the tee. His father had conquered this game, rewritten its history, won tournaments that seemed impossible. But this wasn't about being Tiger's son anymore. This wasn't about living up to anything. This was about Charlie Woods becoming his own legend. What happened next wasn't just a golf story. It was a collision of pressure and privilege, of inherited greatness and individual destiny. It was a reminder that sometimes the people we expect to break under the weight of legacy are the ones who carry it forward in ways nobody predicted. In the next 15 minutes, we're going to uncover how a teenager became the story everyone couldn't stop talking about. How one swing changed everything. How Charlie Woods did what seemed impossible. He made his own name mean something entirely different. This is the story of generational pressure, redemption, and the moment when everyone realized they were watching history. Most people know Tiger Woods through records. 23 majors, 82 PGA Tour victories. A comeback so improbable it rewrote sports psychology textbooks. He's the greatest golfer most of us will ever witness. But there's something they don't talk about enough. The price of that greatness. The camera follows Tiger through decades of footage. Every frame tells a story of perfection demanded, maintained, defended. His children watched all of it. They watched their father pursue immortality while balancing the fragile relationship between parent and legend. And somewhere in that childhood, surrounded by trophies and expectations, Charlie Woods was learning what it meant to carry the most recognized name in golf. Here's what most sports documentaries miss. Being the child of a legend isn't inspiration. It's a burden that wakes you up at 3 in the morning. Charlie's early years on the course were different from his father's. He didn't have the hunger that comes from nothing. He had everything except the one thing he actually needed: permission to be imperfect. Every shot was scrutinized. Every mistake felt like it mattered more because of whose son he was. The pressure wasn't spoken. It was atmospheric. It was in the way commentators tilted their heads, in the way crowds held their phones a little tighter when he played. And yet, something shifted. Around age 14, 15, people started noticing that Charlie had stopped playing like he was afraid of failing his father's legacy. He started playing like he was curious about his own. The swing changed. The approach changed. The mentality transformed from inherited pressure to personal ambition. Then came the tournaments that nobody expected. We're not talking about major championships, not yet. We're talking about the moments when younger players start genuinely competing at levels that suggest they might possibly become something significant. Charlie's scoring averages started dropping. His consistency became remarkable for someone his age. Junior tours started buzzing with conversations that felt different than the typical Tiger's kid plays golf narrative. The viral moment came during a tournament that nobody had circled on their calendar. It wasn't the Masters. It wasn't an event with decades of tradition and guaranteed media coverage. It was one of those tournaments that only golf enthusiasts follow closely. But Charlie's performance that weekend was so startling, so definitively above his competition, that the footage started spreading across platforms not frequented by traditional golf media. The video that changed everything was simple. A single swing. A putt on the 18th hole that went in with the kind of silence that only comes when everyone watching realizes they're witnessing something rare. The comments started flooding in. First from golf communities. Then from people who don't watch golf at all, but who recognize the look on someone's face when they've just accomplished something they weren't sure they could do. Is this Tiger's son? Became the entry point for millions. But it wasn't a question anymore. It was the beginning of a completely different conversation. What strikes you when you watch interviews with Charlie around this time is a maturity that feels almost unnatural. He's clearly aware of who his father is. There's no pretending otherwise. But there's also a clarity in his voice that suggests he's already moved past needing to address the comparison directly. He talks about his own game with the precision of someone who spent years thinking about golf strategically, rather than emotionally. But there's something else, too. Something that doesn't make it into the highlight reels. In quieter moments, you catch glimpses of the pressure still there, just transformed. It's not, "I have to be like my father." It's, "I have to be worthy of the attention this name brings." It's a different kind of weight, but weight nonetheless. The records started falling. Junior tournament records, age group records, the kind of incremental milestones that might seem minor until you realize they're the same stepping stones that preceded his father's dominance. But here's where the story gets complicated, because Charlie's journey isn't a simple hero's ascent. It's messier than that. There were tournaments where he didn't play well, moments where the pressure seemed to crack through his composure, rounds that reminded everyone watching that even legendary talent needs time, needs permission to grow, needs space to fail without it being framed as the death of some grand narrative. The viral videos didn't stop coming, but the comments sections evolved. People started genuinely wondering about his ceiling, not in a dismissive way, but with the same intensity that surrounds anyone who might genuinely reshape their sport. You have to understand, golf hadn't been this excited about a young player in years. Not since Tiger burst onto the scene. Not since anyone had suggested that generational change was possible. What the internet struggled to understand, but what became clear to anyone actually following Charlie's development, was that he wasn't trying to be Tiger 2.0. He was creating something different, a different mental approach, a different philosophy about the game, a different understanding of what pressure could do to you if you let it, and what it could create if you channeled it right. The moment that truly resonated, the moment that made this story bigger than golf, came during an interview where Charlie was asked directly about his father's shadow. His answer was honest in a way that felt rare. He didn't dismiss the comparison. He didn't claim it didn't matter. Instead, he talked about learning to separate who his father was from who he needed to become. He talked about understanding that being Tiger's son was his starting point, not his ceiling. It was framework, not fate. And when you watched the internet respond to that interview, it wasn't the typical sports discourse anymore. People who don't care about golf were commenting about generational pressure, about legacy, about the courage it takes to forge your own path when the entire world is comparing you to someone who redefined an entire sport. The records kept coming. The tournaments kept building his resume. The viral moments accumulated into a narrative that no amount of media manipulation could have created. This was organic momentum. This was a young person becoming genuinely excellent at something, in real time while being observed by millions. The final piece of this story, the part that makes it resonate beyond sports, is that it's still unfolding. We don't know yet if Charlie Woods will become the greatest golfer who ever lived. We don't know if his name will eventually rival his father's on the record books. That's not determined. That's still being written. What we do know is that somewhere between the pressure and the potential, between the inherited greatness and the personal ambition, something remarkable happened. A teenager decided he wasn't going to spend his life running from a legacy. Instead, he was going to add to it, not by copying it, by transforming it. And the world couldn't look away. Every time you see his name trending, every time another viral video emerges from one of his tournaments, remember that you're not just watching a young golfer improve. You're watching someone navigate one of the most psychologically complex journeys in sports, the journey of becoming your own person while carrying the most significant name possible. That's what makes his story matter. Not because he's Tiger's son, but because he's becoming something nobody predicted. And we're all watching it happen in real time,